Hello. Welcome to the Yoga for the Creative Soul book club. This is the moment where I usually hold up the book and reminds me that I meant to grab it before I started the recording. So, thanks, Clairange. I need it anyway for a page number. So I'm going to skedaddle off and do that. But you guys, you're so prepared. I love it. While I skedaddle off, I invite those of you live and those of you watching the recording. Oh, she's in it. Is it 97? Thanks, brain. All right, my brain knew. You guys have my back. I love this little community. Thank you. For those of you watching the recording, we today are talking about facing the habit of inner harm. So the teaching will probably start about 4 minutes into the video, somewhere around the 15-minute mark will be the first expressive activity, and probably somewhere around the 22-minute mark, the second expressive arts activity. Although I can't fully guarantee the times, I did want to give you a sense of that in case you want to scrub through the video. You're more than welcome to do that. This is, as you have seen and heard, the Yoga for the Creative Soul book club gathering. My name is Erin Byron. I wrote the book, and we're working our way through chapter 7, which is connecting to our creative essence, our creative soul, through the system of Raja Yoga, which is provided by the Yoga Sutras. Yoga is a 5,000-year-old tradition that began in India. It predates organized religion, and if you are a religious practitioner, you will find it likely fits into the language of your religion. We, as a group, as you are here with me now or watching this video, are privileged to live, work, play, convene, and create upon the traditional lands of the original peoples. I am within, and many of the participants here are within or directly adjacent to the Haldimand Tract, which was promised to the Native peoples for their assistance in the War of 1812. But through treaty, theft, occupation, genocide, we are, most of us, existing on lands that were not originally our own, and we do support the endeavors of the original caretakers and their ancestors in finding the pathway to truth and reconciliation. You can learn more about the action steps at trc.ca. The theme today in our Yoga for the Creative Soul gathering comes from page 97 in the book, where we're doing the activity together of facing the habit of inner harm. Now, forms of harm are difficult or easy to see depending on the kind of harm we're looking at. This idea comes from the first limb of the 8 limbs of yoga that are described in the Yoga Sutras. So the Yoga Sutras teach us this system of connecting to the true self through restraining harmful behaviors, cultivating healthy behaviors, caring for the body, the energy, noticing the senses and their role in our relationship with reality, learning to concentrate the mind, which leads to an altered state of meditation, also changes the anatomical brain and nervous system, which in turn leads to a more pervasive kind of meditative state, which you might think of as enlightenment or samadhi. Yes, but we're here just playing with the first limb of yoga. The longer you practice yoga, the more those early limbs actually become important as a way of interfacing in your life. So that first limb is yama, which are the restraints. And we've been talking about the restraints the last several weeks, that all of these restraints, truthfulness, being a student of the divine, non-stealing, non-grasping or coveting, are guided by this idea of non-harm, ahimsa. Ahimsa shows up in several organized Eastern religions. Yoga predates religion. You'll find this in many other religions. You've perhaps heard of the golden rule, which would fit here. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, building empathy in the brain. You know, the more we learn about neuroscience, the more we see that the ancients were really on track with what creates a personal mental health, interpersonal health, and a healthy society. But it starts with restraining harm, ahimsa, non-harm. And that is through action, through word, and even through thought toward others or to ourselves. And that last little bit can be really tricky because we often don't notice when we're harming ourselves. Part of that is a denial thing. Part of it is cyclical, where even if we know we're doing something that harms ourselves, we engage in the behavior and then we feel guilty about it later and we beat ourselves up, which makes us feel bad. So we engage in the behavior, and that's a classic cycle of addiction. You know, whether that's substance use addiction or watching too much TV or unhealthy relationships or whatever that might be. So there's obvious forms of self-harm, but there's less obvious forms. And one of the less obvious forms is how we how we speak to ourselves. And there's been a lot said and written in the last 30 or 40 years about affirmation. Affirmations are meant to be stated in the positive, as if they were already true, using all the pronouns, with eye contact in the mirror, stated out loud, using action words. I mean, the more you look into affirmations, the more refinements you will find. And the idea is, as we're repeating these sentiments in some of the ways I just described, that's going into the not conscious mind and is helping to rewrite the automatic thoughts. And our automatic, what are some of these automatic thoughts I might be talking about? I am simultaneously trying to come up with automatic thoughts and not say harmful things, which, so let me just give a trigger warning then. So I'm about to say 3 to 5 sentences that could be really triggering. They are examples, not statements of truth. So I'm so stupid. I'm so fat. How could you do that? Why are we even bothering to try? And you'll notice even in your self-talk, you might call yourself you might call yourself me, you might call yourself we. I certainly know people who call themselves them, or, you know, speak in the third person, he, she. So just noticing what's some of this inner talk that continues, and am I choosing that thought? Some of those things I just said, you would never say that to anybody else. Do you notice when you say it to yourself? Not always, right? Not always. And the thing is, these automatic thoughts are coming from a much deeper place. The not conscious is wow, it's a rich landscape. You know, when we teach meditation, we'll sometimes draw an iceberg on the whiteboard and draw the sea level line and say, like, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is what you're aware of in your consciousness. But all this stuff below the surface are the drivers, the motivators, the things that make us decide who we are and how we function in the world. So the trick is that our long-held beliefs tend to have been programmed in childhood. And then the brain, as the brain keeps developing till we're about 24 years old, the brain developed around these core beliefs. The nervous system learn to regulate itself around these beliefs. And so they're so deeply held as truths that we don't even notice them anymore. And yet the way we talk to ourselves, who we choose to have relationships with, our set point of emotional stability, calm, relaxation, anxiety, these things are arising from this not conscious self perception. So in the practice of non-harm, we are bringing those naturally automated things into our conscious awareness and working with them. Yoga gives us the tools to work with them. Mindfulness, by definition, is witnessing the thoughts, witnessing the physiological perceptions. And yoga, thank you, yoga, is giving us a framework for the direction to move in if we notice some things that are not contributing to our relaxation, not contributing to our well-being, not contributing to our relationships and society. So our awareness and acceptance are moving things from a place of potential harm to non-harm. And if you saw the little cartoon that I posted in the Yoga for the Creative Soul book club just today, then you know where we're headed with today's activity is on into thinking of how did our belief systems get constructed around ourselves as creative creatures, and what's been the impact about being able to share our efforts with the world. So we're very thankful in the Yoga for the Creative Soul group that we've created this safe space of interconnected people. If you've ever looked through who the members of the group are, for many of you, you will see several of your friends' faces. You will know that you are in this group with people that you know and love. And even the ones who you don't recognize, you can trust they're of the same ilk, that we're very much like-minded, kind, accepting, supportive, and friendly people. So as you post your creative output to the group, it is being met with appreciation, with curiosity, with resonance. And you're always welcome to post and request the level of feedback that you're working with. So the feedback, I've never heard an unsupported comment in the group. Thank goodness. It would be addressed immediately if such a thing did happen. But if you don't want any comments, you can post that. And on the other side of the spectrum, if you're looking for constructive feedback, you can post that as well. It's really, really nice when we share our works to share with the request at the beginning. But for those of you holding the book, I'm tempted to ask you what step one of the activity is, but I'm not going to do it. What I'm going to do is ask you to draw, just sketch this out real quick. Draw a picture of your ideal self showing your work shamelessly. This can be in symbolic form. If you're more of a wordsmith, you can write it as a poem or an allegory. You want to just scribble it out in color and form, go for it, or some kind of literal representation of yourself sharing your work. And as you do so, I ask that you please also notice what autonomic feedback are you getting, because I've already said it. How did your heart rate respond to that idea? What did your breath do when you thought of sharing your stuff? And then remembering that you're sharing in an idealized kind of way, where you're going to receive an ideal response and feel ideally about the work itself. Does that change the heart rate in any way? Does that change the depth and rhythm of the breath? And we'll take about 60 more seconds just to play with getting this sense down on paper. halfway through. If you are noticing an activation from this idea, in what ways are you able to bring soothing? Is there room for a deeper breath? You can wrap that up or keep going if you choose. But as we consider our more deeply held beliefs and how this programming has often come from the voices and teachings of others, and being wired for survival, we're way more likely to remember criticism, slights, hurtful interactions than we are to remember the compliments, the support, the appreciation. Just yet another reason why affirmation is so important, is to shift the way things are weighted within us. It's true that we are neurologically designed to overfocus on the pain and negativity. And the skills of yoga following this 8-limbed path guide us into more mature and spiritual ways of interfacing with reality, with love and joy, as well as with fear and harm. So set that aside now as we move on through this activity of facing the inner harm. The first step is a bit of a journey. I'll offer it to you as a guided visualization. So you can let your eyes fall closed or just look downwards if that serves you better. Reminding your breath that it has more time and space. So you can deepen, comfortable, slowing, taking yourself into the creative void, the place where all is possible. And imagine yourself as a time traveler, going back to a moment in time where you showed one of your creative endeavors to someone, and it was not well received. As you are going back, this time traveler, you wind up an unseen figure in the room with your younger self. So you can watch this all play out as a loving presence, seeing yourself show your stuff. And what did that version of yourself look like in that moment of vulnerability? Was it excitement, enthusiasm, trepidation? What do you see in that younger self? And notice what happens to your younger self in that moment of the work not being well received. What changes happen in the posture, in the facial expression? Do you notice an alteration in the breath of the body that's breathing right now? We want to key into witnessing that and then noticing if there were a thought bubble above this young person's head, what thought has come to mind in that moment of the art being somehow rebuked? No one wants to hear me. I'm not good enough. My voice is unimportant. I didn't do this right. Acknowledge the belief that got triggered in that moment, and then give yourself a deep breath. Imagine putting that belief in its own capsule, if it wasn't already in a thought bubble, encapsulate it somehow. Move it farther away from that young person. Go to that young person with an embrace With a kind touch, you have materialized in the room, and this young person can see you, taking in your comfort and your support. Share some of your appreciation for that creative work or for the act of creation itself. Affirm that young person's goodness and right to exist. And imagine yourself taking this young person to a place of safety and happiness. This might be a safe space that you've created in your imagination quite often, or it might be brand new and curated for this person at that age. Watch this young person's happiness, relaxation, as this youth explores the space. Perfect colors, best toys or aspects of nature. You can add protectors to this space, be they angels, loved ones who've passed on, great big mama bears, tigers or turtles. Whoever will help that young person feel safe and loved and free. If it makes more sense to imagine this young person absorbed into your heart, mind, spirit, that is an alternative. But what we know is that young person has been removed from that moment and offered support, solace, integration, light, and love. And we come back to our grown-up selves then, knowing that that younger self has been taken away from that moment in time and offered continuous protection and love. Back to the body where we are right now. Back to this creative soul gathering. We remind ourselves of what appeared in that thought bubble. What did we encapsulate? What was that belief system that got programmed at that time? And we'll work with this creatively somehow. In Yoga for the Creative Soul, I suggest writing a stand-up bit about it. And certainly that's an option, but unless you're in flow already, we likely don't have the time for it. So given the time constraint right now, if you're live, maybe you will just do a 3-panel comic strip that expresses that belief. You can whistle a little ditty or represent it in your drawing somehow. So you are bringing your self-expression to the moment in time that you just took that young self out of. You are expressing the belief system from that moment in time. Not its solution, but the hurt, the pain, the darkness, the himsa, or the harm that got programmed in that moment. We're expressing the harm. Of course, if you are watching the video later on, I invite you to pause it, take as much time as you want to create this drawing, this stand-up bit, this comic strip panel. You're always welcome to revisit these videos again and again. Anytime an activity or a practice really strikes you, note it for yourself. Download the video, return to it again and again. If you're in a creative group with others, you might use it as a springboard to your writers group, to your painters group. The videos are public, so if there is anybody that you know who might benefit, you're more than welcome to share it with them. But we'll take another couple of minutes to express that belief. What happened in that moment? What did it make us feel and believe about ourselves? All the while, when we're doing these expressive arts activities, remember to check back in with your breath, to remain mindful and aware of the thoughts and feelings that are passing through your consciousness. Mindfulness, yoga, meditation train us in dual awareness, the monkey mind and the observer self. So we're feeling what is passing through, but we are also witnessing it without being harmed or threatened by it. Expressing that harmful belief. And while you are putting the finishing touches on yours, I will show you mine. So this is a grown up looking in the other direction, and that's me with one of my stories. By the time I was 6, I realized people's jobs are to be writers. I could be a writer. So I've been writing. I got my first typewriter when I was 10. I'm working on my next book right now on safety. But the belief system was that I'm not important. What I have to say isn't important. I shouldn't bother people with anything that has to do with me because I'm not important. And that made me sad. So I was aware of that sadness and feeling empty and disconnected while I was making that creation. For those of you who played along with that activity, I send much love and comfort, breath, and support to those parts of you who have carried this belief for so long. The next step is the solace. Now, in the journey that we did, that is a journey of solace. You can use that. I actually encourage you, it's like a workshop within a workshop. That journey of going back to the child in the moment of pain and getting that kid out of there is actually one of the most important things that we do in psychotherapy. This shows up neurologically now in whether the dissociative or integrative parts of the brain are lighting up at various places. It alters our autonomics. It changes our ability to care for ourselves. It shifts our relationship with addiction, which we talked about briefly here. We often talk about during our little check-ins, that because we all have habits that we don't always appreciate in our lives and are working on transforming them. We talk about these things, and when we go to the source and we find the wounded part and in some way get that part of ourselves safe, because trauma exists as an ongoing present in the mind, that himsa or harm is continuing to happen until the trauma is resolved. When we rescue the child, we're turning something that in our nervous systems is still present into the past. So huge trauma recovery work there. But trauma happens in isolation. This is why we do it in therapy, right? We can do it ourselves. If we do it ourselves, it's recommended that we then in some way connect with a loved one. Trauma happens in isolation. Recovery happens in community, happens through connection. It must be so. So don't do this stuff on your own. But what I wanted to say is come back to that little journey if you wish. And if it helped you or helps you, do it again and again for different moments in time. Just don't pick those big crises to do by yourself. That's not going to get you the outcome you're looking for. Get a support person who does this kind of work, and let them guide you through the journey so that you're not alone with it. But for those manageable pieces of harmed self, you can watch that visualization go through that journey again and again to gather more and more of yourself into comfort, into safety. Changes the brain, changes the nervous system. If you want to know more about that, I always have a trauma training booked. The next one's at the end of February 2022. Moving on to step 3, also from the Yoga Sutras, right before they start telling us about these yamas, these restraints, which happens around Sutra 35, I think. In Sutra 33, it says, when a negative arises, its opposite is to be attended. So when we notice that we're causing ourselves harm, or in this case, when we notice those beliefs that do not serve us, we create a counter belief. And you can keep a running list of your self-talk, things that you catch yourself saying to yourself, the harmful statements, and sometimes beyond words, sense, right? You think I ever tell myself, you're not important? Never. But it's hardwired in there. So we find the opposite. We write that affirmation. It can be elaborate, as described earlier in our time together, or it can be very simple. So, like, for me, the opposite of not important isn't important. That doesn't, like, yeah, I mean, every living creature is important. It doesn't hit the pain point. The opposite for me of not important is seen, connected. So I do well with simplicity. I just need a word, and then I'll take the word, which elicits a somatic sense. When I think seen, I feel connected. My chest relaxes. My abdomen softens. I can breathe more deeply. I feel safer in the world. Like, I don't feel like I need to go through life like, oh, don't let it hit me. If I'm seen, then there's space, there's freedom. So this is a very specific example to support you in working with your own. Did you get your opposite statement while I was saying all that? Jot it down. I once had a spiritual therapist who told me to write it down 20 times a day, like doing lines like Bart Simpson on the chalkboard. And then we bring it into our meditation, right? Every time you exhale, you feel the felt sense of that opposite. Every time you inhale, you speak it or sense it for yourself, so that it's cycling through the breath, it's cycling through the autonomics. It is taking the conscious, seen, connected, and moving it to the not conscious, reprogramming our set point. And then whatever medium you chose for expressing that moment of pain, get that same medium, pause the video and write a stand-up bit about this new counter belief. Take the time now to express the new belief, the new felt sense. So this is you claiming non-harm. This is you rewriting the harm. Notice your breath and notice your body. Notice if this medium behaves differently now that the intention and feeling behind the expression has changed. We're not trying to make it anything. We're just expressing the new belief. It might be worthy, it might be all is well, it might be I believe in myself, I trust myself, whatever it is for you. Notice the breath and embodiment as you are expressing. As you continue to give yourself the time and freedom to express this, I'm just going to give you some recommendations of what to do with it. So the expression itself, maybe that was just to work it out in the moment. If you wish, you can post it as a reminder. The back of your bedroom door, the inside of a cupboard. But the reframing belief, the affirmation, the new programming, post that where you are going to see it regularly. You can make the statement really pretty and snap a picture, make it the wallpaper on your phone, hang it on your bathroom mirror, packing tape it to the steering wheel or dashboard. Whatever it takes, have this counter programming in a place where you're going to interface with it regularly and multiple times a day. And every time you see it, give yourself the physiological feedback of non-harm as well. Take a deep breath every time you see it. Stretch a little bit. Say it out loud. If there's a mirror nearby, smile into the mirror. See how true it is in your own eyes, in your own autonomic set point, letting it be soothing, kind, loving. I'm just doing my best to create a counter image along with you. For those in the group who are playing along, before we stop the recording, is there anything that you wish to share with the folks at home? I just drew a bunch of people around a fire, holding hands, seen and connected, part of community, warmed, oxytocin, one of those happiness chemicals that have to do with our connection. And if there's anybody who wants to share, hop on in. All right. Thank you for joining us live. Or were you coming in? No? All right. For those of you who are joining us live, or if you're watching the recording, remember to like, share, subscribe. If you're ever free at 12:30 Eastern on a Wednesday, join in, reach out to me with your questions if you want one-on-one support or to learn more about the neurobiology of trauma recovery. It's been great. Thank you so much. And I wish you non-harm in thoughts, beliefs, and interactions today and every day. Do this as many times as you need to or want to keep that reprogramming happening. Thanks, everybody.